Hello and welcome to another great edition of Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life, where we all talk about all things faith, finance, and more importantly, purpose and fruitfulness in our lives in whatever path we are pursuing into the glory of God. Listen, this is one of my favorite guests. We've never met before. This is my first time meeting him, but I've been a fan of his for a long time. So you're going to really enjoy this show. But before we get into it, let me focus on this one scripture. A man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great men. You'll recognize that from Proverbs 18:16. And it really applies to my guest today. And the answer to this driving question, how might my God-given gifts be relevant in the current culture? Listen, many of us, especially those of us who are raised in the church, we think, to really bring your, God-given gifts to the table, you got to be a great singer, or you got to be a preacher, or you got to have, be a great praise leader or a usher. And we think of those traditional church roles. But now we know today there are just so many ways and gifts and talents that you can really be who you are, use the talents and gifts you've been blessed with, but in a way that really brings glory to God. And my guest today is a perfect example of that. Listen, sit tight, stay tuned. We'll be right back. This is Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life. Hello and welcome back to Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm your host, Alfred Edmond Jr. Listen, we're talking about how you can use your God-given gifts wherever they are to be relevant in the current culture. And we're talking about not only faith culture, but the culture at large, because part of our mission is really to spread the gospel, the good word throughout the world. And listen, there are so many great ways to do it, but today's guest, I've been a fan of primarily via social media. It's got to be at least 5 years. He's an actor. He's a comedian. He's an entrepreneur. By the way, if you're going to be an actor and a comedian, you almost have to be an entrepreneur. He's a New York Times bestselling author, podcast developer and host, content creator, influencer. What don't he do? Listen, please welcome to the show, Kevin Fredericks, actually better known as the one and only KEV-ON-STAGE.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, man, I've been looking forward to this. I've been such a big fan of yours for a long, long time.
Thank you.
I always like to start at these conversations. What we end up doing for a living, for a life, often doesn't bear any resemblance to what we thought we might be doing, And so I kind of want you to get into your journey. The thing about, especially now, especially for your generation and even younger, I know I'm older than you are, is that the thing that you may end up doing may be something that doesn't even exist yet, or the way you do it doesn't exist yet. I mean, podcast host was not a thing, when you were a kid.
Yeah.
So when somebody said to you, Kevin, what do you want to be when you grow up? Tell me about your journey to little Kevin to the person you are today.
Yeah, when I was very little, I wanted to have a very specific job. I wanted to operate a wrecking ball machine, and I wanted to destroy buildings with it because I just couldn't believe that people got paid to swing that ball around. And then I remember even as a kid, I was just thinking like, man, there's probably not enough buildings to destroy to do that only as a job. And I don't want to do any other part of the construction. Like, I don't want to dig dirt. I don't want to clean up stuff. I just want to be the world's greatest wrecking ball guy. But even as a kid, I was like, I don't know if that's feasible. Then for the longest, I remember just thinking I want to travel for work. Like, I want to go all over the world doing what I want, doing what I do for a living. And for a long time, I thought that was going to be playing in the NBA, even though I was never that great of a basketball player. I was never on any radar to even play Division I college. So I don't know why that was a dream of mine. But for me, if you're going to dream, you got to dream as far as the eye can see. Like, so if I love basketball, then it's only rational that I go for the NBA. And I remember when I was in college, when I was in high school, about to go to college, I went to a tryout at some very small school, like Division III Pine State. college where the dorm room was half the size of this room that I'm in now. And I thought, I'm going to dominate these boys. They live in here in the middle of the woods. When I tell you, Alfred, I've never been so thoroughly embarrassed on a basketball court in my life. Them kids belong there. And them belonging there made me realize that I didn't belong. so so I was cool with like realizing I actually had no regrets. Like for me, it was okay that I reached the end of that road. I tried, I went as far as I could go. And I realized in the moment that's gonna be the end for me. But to answer your question, yeah, what I do, the only thing that I do now for a living that existed exactly as it did then was stand-up comedy. Right. Everything else, social media, podcasts, YouTube, brand deals, none of that stuff existed in any shape or form. Streaming, right. Even having a show on BET Plus, like right. Streaming wasn't a thing. You could have sold a TV show, but so yeah, you're right. I did not or could not fathom doing what I do now because it literally didn't exist at all.
You remind me talking about with your sports aspirations when you were a kid. And there was a string of, I think a thread, either a thread on Threads or on X or whatever. And it was this thread of brothers talking about the day they knew that they weren't, but they weren't that good. So my dream sport was football, though in high school I was 110 pounds. I was fast.
Yeah.
I could catch, I could take a hit. So, I could play street ball, but I was sure, this is what I'm going to do. And Kev, I could tell you the day I knew this wasn't for me. So I was going out for high school football, in the tryouts.
Yeah.
And I got hit. I was returning a punt because I was a good receiver in punt returner, kick returner because I was fast and I could catch.
Yeah.
Man, I got hit so hard. It was the closest I came to getting knocked unconscious. To this day, like I was laying on the field, looking up through my face mask, rethinking all my options, saying maybe my mama was right. Maybe I should just, because she didn't want me playing anyway. And I'll say this, the brother that hit me was one of my closest friends to this day. It was just inducted posthumously into the NFL Hall of Fame. So,
oh wow,
the late Sam Mills, who played.
Oh wow,
he was one of my best friends in high school, and I was one of the few non-NFL players to speak at his homegoing. And I remember the first time I ever got hit by him was in 5th grade, and I remember that. But I remember the last time I was like, Sam was like, without saying those words. Like you said,
you're done here.
You did good.
You did good, man. You did good. You should be proud. But let me take it from here. Yeah, this is not the Lord's will for your life, and that's okay.
Every brother who has Aspire can remember that person.
Absolutely.
That says there's levels to this brother, and you're not going to ever get to it. Absolutely. Well, listen. Fast forward to today. Like I said, I've been a fan of yours, at least on social media. I haven't had the pleasure of seeing you in stand up live. I've seen the hilarious stuff you've done in these basically church. What's the name of the series you do with pastors and all the different personalities of Christian life and church and whatnot? Churchy.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I thought that was not just thought that was ingenious when I saw a few episodes of that. So talk a bit about what you do now. Again, best-selling author. I think you got another book about to drop if it hasn't dropped already.
Yeah, Successful Failures. Successful Failure is my new book. That's where it's my life story told comedically through all my losses. It's getting beat up, the worst deals I signed. I legally can't say someone stole $150,000 or more from me, but I can legally say that amount of money was not correctly accounted for. So I just thought, in the same way I make fun of my life in video form, my book is that same thing, but it also is a good lesson in business and marketing and how I became who I am. So it's absolutely something you can learn from, and laugh along the way.
Listen, we're going to jump more into that book. I definitely want to talk about your bestseller, Marriage Be Hard, which has a resonance for me as someone who's been married 3 times. So I admire you in that space, you and your wife, Melissa.
Yeah.
Your work founder is founder of KEV-ON-STAGE Studios. You're a beast on social media. So listen, everybody, we got Kev on stage in the house. This is Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr., and we will be right back. Welcome back to Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr., here with the one and only Kev on stage. Listen, Kevin, you do so many things. Yes, within kind of the same bailiwick of comedic talents, and as an entrepreneur, as a producer. Talk about how you kind of built the infrastructure of what you do. And to go back to the opening theme of the show, to do it in a way that you are bringing the gifts that you have and to elevate your faith, your identity as a man of faith, in a way that's not seen as a traditional way of doing that.
Yeah, I think, my purpose / passion is to create as many opportunities for others as possible. And for me, that first started out with me building up KEV-ON-STAGE, just the page. And as soon as I got a chance, I held the door open for as many of my friends as I possibly could. That's Tony Baker, whom I used to hire when I worked at All Def as the head of content and talent. I used to hire him. Then when I left there and went on my own, well, I technically didn't leave. I went on tour while I was working there full time. I took him into here, Moore, who was another one of my coworkers at All Def, on our first tour. I just tried to create opportunities for others and treat them as humanly good as humanly possible. And I think, how you treat people is a reflection of your Christianity. Like, even if the business allows for you to take advantage of people, you don't have to, right? So like when I was doing Keep Your Distance, I would fly people out and I would put them up in a hotel. I would cover their ground transportation. I would pay them to do stand-up. And then at the end, I would give them their set to do with what they please. And I remember a good amount of people saying, one, you're paying these people entirely too much, and two, if they want their set, you should charge them $2,000 or $3,000 for it because it's a professional grade. And I just thought, like, well, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, even though that's how people were doing things and that's how the business was run, I just don't think that's right. And it's like, it reminds me of the story, not to compare myself to Jesus. I'm not doing that at all. Want to be clear. But the woman, the adulterous woman, the right thing to do and the legal thing to do was to stone her. If you committed adultery, it was both legal and right to stone her. But Jesus didn't come to do what was right. He came to do what was good. And the good thing was to say, well, he who's without sin cast the first stone. And well, nobody had the goodness to absolve themselves of their sins. So that's kind of how I like to approach myself. Even if everybody says we should do this, that doesn't mean I should do it. And I think that has served me well in so many facets. And even if there's been no return, the old or kind of new saying is the reward for being a good person is being a good person. So you don't do it just to receive something. You do it because it's right, or that's at least how I do it. Anything else that comes back to me is strictly a benefit, but not the reason I do it.
No. And I appreciate the disclaimer about you're not comparing yourself to Jesus, but at the same time, his walk is the walk that we're supposed to model.
Right.
And so, I had the same revelation over time about just because you have a right to do it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do.
Right.
There's a lot of things we have the right to do. You can even argue we have the God-given right to do because we have free will. But there's a major distinction between what you have the right to do. For example, you have the right to maybe retaliate against someone who hurt you. But
Right.
the right thing to do is to show grace, to try to understand why they did it, and to show the same grace you would want for yourself. So I totally get that. And in your business, you're right, like you said, that's an unusual way to approach it because it's a tough business. I mean, I look at stand-up comedy as one of the areas of entertainment. I used to tell my friends, there's no such thing as an amateur stand-up comedian because either you can do it or you can't.
Yeah.
Because there's no net, there's no forgiveness from the audience. There's no either you can deliver or you can't. And there's a lot of very, very talented people that can't do that kind of work because it actually takes a certain amount of courage and willingness to fail, as you said.
Yeah.
No successful stand-up comedian started out without bombing.
Absolutely.
And
if they say they never bombed, they're either lying or they're not good.
Or they're still
or
bombing.
Or they're lazy.
Yeah.
But yes, you have to bomb to be good for sure.
Yeah. And so that's why many funny people or talented people, I'll say, who may be funny, but there's no shade on them, but they don't take that path because, again, it takes a certain amount of courage and a willingness to endure failure in order to really be good at what you do.
Yeah.
So fast forward, talk to me about your first book, one that fascinates me, Marriage Be Hard, and what you've been able to accomplish with your partner and wife, Melissa.
Yeah, Marriage Be Hard was our first book, New York Times bestseller.
You could say that again because
New York Times bestseller.
Appreciate the Amazon, but New York Times bestseller is a different level.
It's a different level. It's very, very hard to do, and I'm grateful that we've done it. I don't know if I'll be able to do it again, but luckily, just like Grammy Award winning, once you've done it, and they can say it forever. It doesn't matter how many times. You're just Grammy Award winning. You're New York Times bestselling author. But yeah, Marriage Be Hard was Melissa and I's letter to ourselves in the sense that, we wrote about everything that we wished someone had told us when we were, engaged, dating, and getting married. And we wrote about it in the same way we did our podcast, The Love Hour, both straightforward and comedically. Melissa is a brilliant teacher, writer, speaker, and she has an ability to disseminate information that anybody can understand. And I have an ability to make things that are very serious light. And I think that combination is what made the podcast great and therefore made the book great. Still a very popular thing. People still bring that book to shows just to prove to me that they've got it and that they want to share, how much it meant to them. So I'm grateful. It's fantastic, and I'm super glad that it resonated with people so well. We hope to write something that people could, kind of like the 5 love languages. It's almost a timeless book. So even 5 years from now, somebody who might be 15 years old now, they're 20 years old getting married like we were, somebody might give them that book and they could be like, oh my gosh, this is super impactful. And hopefully, and I still believe that it will still be as good then as it is now. So yeah, I'm very proud of it. Melissa's great. I enjoy being married to her. I enjoy her being my best friend, and I enjoy her being my business partner because it's like she's the most brilliant business mind as well. And it's like so helpful to have another brilliant person and somebody who can tell me about myself. When I'm being a crybaby or a brat or being petty or whatever. True emotion.
Not you.
Oh, Kevin. Yeah. Oh, Alfred Edmond, boy. Alfred Edmond Jr., let me tell you what. People don't know Kev can get in his feelings, as anybody can.
Yeah.
And she's able to be like, Kev, now you acting up. Get that little anger out, and now let's get back to business. So it's truly a blessing to have somebody who understands you be your business partner.
Well, I'm going to be honest. I got to go back and read that book. Like I said, I've been married multiple times.
Are you married now?
No, I'm not married now.
Okay, give it the fourth time, gonna be the charm. And I know that's not the same, but this time gonna be different.
No. Like I said, I don't have to get married again, but I'm not against getting married again. And of course, the goal is to learn and to, to get it right. If that's in my future. So,
amen.
And I spend a lot of time studying the word in particular around. I mean, you said it without saying it. Your wife is really a helpmate. She really does help.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think in the world of relationships, both whether in church or out of church, we overlook that aspect of it. We look at so many other elements of what makes a couple, and we overlook that very, very valuable thing that bonds people together and makes it, the journey not only endurable but enjoyable, not just endurable. So listen, everybody. As you can see, we're going all over the place because this is a very multifaceted man. This is Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm with KEV-ON-STAGE, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life. And we're here with KEV-ON-STAGE. Kev, I've talked about my admiration for people who do stand up. And I think one of the things I appreciate about you, and again, I do have personal friends that stand up. For example, Chloe Hilliard is someone I've known.
Love Chloe.
Since she was in high school. I used to be, when she was a journalist, I taught her in a high school journalism workshop back in the day. I'm a big fan of, and I haven't met her, Zainab Johnson. So they're just comedians who I love because they are, funny.
Yeah.
But really smart, really interesting takes. And so there's funny enough to get on the stage and survive. Then there's funny enough to do the tours. And then to me, there's a level that you're on, Chloe's on, Zainab is on. I think there's other current and emerging talents that you're going to laugh hard. They know what they're doing. You're like martial artists, you're masters at some level. But at the same time, there's a certain amount of intelligence to the way they approach their craft. And so I want to approach your upcoming tour, or from two perspectives. A lot of people, once they are able to achieve success, and this is no shade on them, in other areas of comedic or entertainment, they step away from stand up.
Yeah.
Because it requires a certain amount of time and demand to do that. And then there are those who, yes, I'm doing this other stuff, but I'm staying in stand up. Talk to me about how you navigated what you decided to do, when you decided to do it, in order to do these other many things that you're doing as a comedian, an entrepreneur, producer, but still stay sharp enough to still go out there and do it without a net.
You know what's so funny? So one, I think stand-up is changing a little bit. You've got a lot of, like Josh Johnson to me is one of the greatest comedians working right now. He's producing somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour of brand spanking new material every week.
Wow.
And this is the content era of stand-up. I'm dubbing it. I don't know if anybody else has called it that. And if you have, please forgive me. But people like him, Matt Rife, Nate Jackson, I think his name is Marlon J. Forgive me, that might not, Morgan J. Where they're doing a lot of interactions with the audience and proving, the improv aspect of comedy is so key now, because you kind of got to feed the beast of social media, and that's how people are selling their tickets. 85 South, they do hour and a half, 2 hours of brand spanking new material as a group. So Tony and I kind of created our own version of that based on almost amalgamation of all those guys, but heavily influenced by what 85 South was doing, to just be able to go out there and riff, and I wouldn't call it traditional stand-up in that sense, but it is very comedic. But to answer your question, I don't think I'm probably going to approach stand-up the way Jay Leno did. He had a hit late night show and he never stopped doing stand-up. Of all the things I do, if I could only do one, I'd do stand-up. To me, there's nothing like the endorphin and the rush of making somebody laugh in person. Right. Laughter is involuntary. So you have to make someone laugh. And fame, money, your favorite movie, notoriety, None of that can coast you for an hour. They'll give you 5 minutes, but nobody can fake laugh for an hour. And comedy is very humbling. And so I haven't shared this publicly yet, but it's just a testament to my wife. I got to share this with you. I was going to do my next tour after Tony and I and do a whole bunch of old material. I was just like, this is just easy. It's fun. I'm having a good time. Low stress. It allows me to do everything else I'm doing and not really have to worry about the material because it's been worked out for years. I told my wife this plan, and she looked me dead in my face and said, no, you are better than that. You are being lazy. Not lazy in that sense, but like you can't cheat stand up. And instead of going back into the lab, you want to coast, and you're better than that. And you can be better than that. And as KEV-ON-STAGE, you should demand more out of yourself, and it's in you. So if that requires you to take a year off, take it off, because I want you to challenge yourself. And I was like, why? I want things easy. She was like, no, you are better than that. And what a blessing to be with somebody who sees the potential in you, knows enough about you to get the best out of you without tearing you down. And she really challenged me. And she also knows I'm very competitive. And it was from a place of being like, I support you. I'll support anything you do. But secretly, if you do those old jokes, we'll both know you could have done more. And there's a certain joy of like the hard part of stand-up, because it's one of the few disciplines where you can't know without performing it if it's funny. You have to perform it in front of an audience to see if it's funny. If you're a dancer, somebody can watch you struggle through the moves, and if you rehearse enough, I don't need an audience to know you're hitting the moves. Like, right. You can do it. A singer, you can practice this song. I know, oh, you're hitting these notes. You don't have to have an audience. But stand up, if you don't try it out in front of somebody, you don't know if it works out the way it works in your mind in front of somebody, in front of an audience member. So I actually like that part of trying to make sure it works, and then tinkering with it along the way. When I'm on tour, usually towards the end of the tour, when there's nothing funnier I can say, it's as funny as it can be, I get bored, because it's like, it's you know, you can tweak a word, a pause, a phrase, you can reorganize a joke, you can reorganize a whole set, you can, you know, all that type of stuff. But eventually, and that's why they call it an act, and that's why most comedians do their special at the end of a tour, because it's as funny as it's ever going to be. And once I get to that point, I'm usually like, all right, I'm done with this, because I want to start over. So I'm anxious to do this new version when I get around to it, even though it'll probably take me some months of practicing in LA. When it's ready, I will be very proud to show it to people. So that's the part where, and also, if I can be honest, Alfred, I'm in complete control. As much as I like TV, the network has a lot of say-so, or whoever the partner is. On social media, the algorithm has a lot of the say-so on how well it does. On stand-up, if I can convince you to buy a ticket, I am in control on how well I do. Outside of, like, you know, you're tired or it's too hot or too cold, for the most part, I'm in control. So if I do bad, it's usually my fault, which, as a control freak, that's very helpful for me.
Right. So listen, you've accomplished so much. NAACP Image Award, I didn't mention that. New York Times bestselling author. You know, featured on everything from Good Morning America, MSNBC. You know, the things, all the things that says you're making it if you haven't made it. But you're still on your journey. You're still becoming, not only as a professional, as an entrepreneur, but as a human being who's navigating.
Yeah.
What is it that is the thing in your spirit? Especially, here's what I tell, especially the people I mentor. I know I'm on the right path, but on a bad day, I still want to get up and do it.
Oh,
like,
man.
I know before I go, this is going to be bad. It was bad when I left yesterday. It's going to be bad today. But I still want to go. And the day I don't feel that, I know I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. Listen, we're coming to the end of this segment, but what I really want to get into is, what moves you when things aren't going right, when you're not as inspired, when maybe that last venture, you talk about some of your funniest, past ventures like the clothing line
Yeah.
that didn't go well. That often when you're successful and you're doing the thing that you love, it is important, especially with people of faith, to understand that there's something else that has to get you going when you're not putting points on the board and you're not being told you're funny and you're not being told you're good. So listen, guys, we're listening to Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life. We're having just a great conversation with KEV-ON-STAGE. And listen, we will be right back. This is Alfred Edmond Jr. with Be Lifted Up Radio, here with KEV-ON-STAGE. And Kev, as we wrapped up our last segment, I was asking you about those days, those times, those seasons sometimes, it's not even just a day, when no matter how good it was and how successful it was, and I tell people, you win the Super Bowl last year, it don't matter this year.
Don't matter.
Nobody cares the day after. And often when you're successful, or when people see you as successful, they see you ascend to the peak and they see the celebration. And I tell people, success is a test that's easy to fail.
I'm gonna steal that. I'm gonna act like I made it up myself.
And I say,
and I'm telling you now. I'm gonna tell you now, Alfred Edmond. I'm not gonna credit you at all. I'm gonna just say that.
But this I guess parable was told to me one time about when the people who climb Mount Everest, the conquering Mount Everest wasn't getting to the top. Conquering Mount Everest was making it safely back down. And they talked about all the people who died on that mountain who made it to the top, but couldn't make it back down and lost their lives. And I say, so as a man of faith, I say the valley moments and how you navigate that really is actually more important than the peak moments when you get there and people are like, yeah, he's the man, he's him.
Yeah.
So talk to me about how you navigate, especially in the entertainment business, man.
Yeah.
You could be the most famous person in the world today and absolutely forgotten tomorrow, just because that's the nature. Your fans are not your friends.
No.
Your fans are not your friends.
I think for me, to answer the first part of your question, creating for me is like a fish swimming. Whether I feel great, sick, if I'm grieving, if I'm poor, or I always feel the desire to create the same way a fish has to swim. Whether, they're say their school officials just attacked and 13 people died, you still got to keep swimming. And that's how creating is for me. It's a flow thing. And I know this is a little morbid and I don't mean it to be, but I want to die empty and I want to die with a project on the way because I love doing what I do so much. I want to always have something that I'm working on. I don't see myself ever retiring completely to where I'm doing nothing. I'm not going to be that guy who just wakes up and goes fishing. At minimum, I'll become a fishing content creator, and I'll be trying for something. And I think you should, and I don't even think, part one is I think everybody should have that. But yes. Part two, I don't think you should have to monetize that. I think for me, it worked out that way. But if I love painting and there was no market for my art, I would still love to paint. And I think sometimes we try to monetize things so much that we end up hating them.
Yes.
And I think for me, like, I like playing music, but I'm not going to make an album. Like, I just play or sing because I enjoy it. But I think to answer your question, I think you've got to find the passion that drives you when you are sick. I think what's made me is it's been more discipline than motivation. Motivation gets you a lot of places, but I'm often unmotivated. But I am rarely undisciplined when it comes to doing what I love. Now, when it comes to eating right and working out, I'm often unmotivated and undisciplined. And you can see the results in the 270 of it all. But in my career...
Well, I'm a health and fitness enthusiast and a natural bodybuilder is my sport, so I'm not going to get
wow.
Yeah. But you if you knew me, when you get to know me better, you'll know. But I do want to get to something. You talked about that, and I talked about that thing you do that you know you're going to do, whether you're motivated or not, whether you're happy or not. And I want to ask you, when was the first time you knew that? For me, I was in college. My degree's in art, not in journalism. I didn't know I was going to end up in media.
Oh, wow.
And art is the example of the thing I love to do, but it wasn't something I realized I wasn't going to ever monetize. It wasn't something I wanted to do for a living. It was just something I
Yeah.
wanted to do. And I remember, I'm not a drinker now, but in college, whoo, one night I really went overboard and got myself sick. So sick that my college girlfriend, I couldn't even make it back to my own dorm room.
Oh,
And
wow.
I stayed in her dorm room for 3 straight days over a weekend, where she was going to the cafeteria and stealing food because I was just a wreck. I mean, just recovering from just overindulging. And I will say this: the only time in my life I've ever been drunk. Even as someone I was always a light drinker when I did drink.
Yeah.
For some reason, that time I don't know what got into me. What got me out of the bed, Kev? I was the editor of the campus newspaper I edited at that time, which was called the Black Voice Costa Rica at Rutgers University. And I couldn't get out of bed for anything else but the staff meeting for my staff to put out the next issue of the paper. I got out of bed. I got to a whole nother campus. I ran the meeting and got the paper out.
Wow.
That's when I knew this is what you want to do. This is the thing that you want to do. And so I had to be like maybe 21 years old, 20, 21 years old. And so it just speaks to your thing about
Yeah.
that's the thing you do, whether you feel like it or not. Can you remember your earliest moment of recognizing that and realizing that
I think
and honoring that? Because some people have that experience and ignore it or dismiss it.
yeah, I think early on, man, when I was doing stand-up, I wasn't getting any money and I didn't even care. Like there was no price you could pay me to replace the feeling that being on stage gave me. I worked a job and I made, enough money to live. It wasn't nothing crazy, but I was so happy to get on stage and make people laugh. I remember I worked at Boeing and I just hated that job. Nothing wrong with the job. I just knew that I didn't want to do this for a living. And at that time, I used to get one set. Shout out to Nate Jackson. I used to do his comedy club room and he used to let me go for 20, 25 minutes. And that one 20, 25-minute set every Thursday would power me for the rest of the week at work. That Friday, I just bask in how good it felt. And that Monday through Thursday, I would just look forward to like, oh man, I can't wait to go on stage again. And there was no money involved. And I couldn't care less. I did it for the pure love of the game. And I think about how, LeBron James or Michael Jordan, like, they don't have a life. Basketball is their life. When their season's over, they might take a week of vacation, two tops, and they're right back to it because it's like breathing air. And I think that's how making people laugh is for me. I do it. I enjoy it so much. I would do it for free. I don't want to, and nor will I, but I would.
Right. No. I mentioned my late friend Sam Mills, and he was my inside, my inside NFL guy. Whenever we got together, I was like, yeah, was really like, and he would say to me, they would be off on Mondays after games. He said Tuesday through Saturday is work.
It's
work. It's like it's work, and the older you get, the less of a time you can take off because obviously, But he said on Sunday or whatever the game day is, on game day, oh my God. It never gets old for me. It never
absolutely
gets
old, absolutely.
And he said the day that it does get old, I know it's time for me to stop doing it.
1,000%. And I think that's how I feel. That when people retire, they usually retire because there's not enough other stuff. There's more other stuff than there is a game, and the meetings and the practice and the rehab becomes too much. But they usually never stop loving playing the actual game.
Yep. Listen, man, the time we got left, I definitely. Oh God, this time went by so fast, as it always does with great guests like you. But what's the best way for the Be Lifted Up Radio audience to follow what you do, follow your socials, catch your tour, get your book, the whole nine?
Wherever you're at, search KEV-ON-STAGE. If you're whatever platform, on TikTok, it's technically KEV-ON-STAGE TikTok, but if you search long enough, you'll find the real me. So any place you're at, search KEV-ON-STAGE, and I'll be there for you.
Listen, Kev, I'm looking forward to meeting you in person at some point soon. I'm trusting God that we'll let our paths cross. I've been a big
Absolutely.
fan of yours for a minute. I'm getting going to be a deeper fan because I want to get married, be hard. I might be DMing you and saying, "Bro, you ain't telling me about this part." Uh, and I just wish all the best to you,
Thank you.
Melissa. Um, Holla at Tony. I'm a fan of his too because of you. And just continue doing what you're doing. You're blessing a lot of people, both those you know and those you don't know. And you
Thank
make
you very
us laugh.
much.
We already know what the word says about laughter and medicine, man. So
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
thanks, Kev. Listen, another great edition of Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr., your host. We will be right back. Hey, another great edition of Be Lifted Up Radio. Kevin Frederick, better known as KEV-ON-STAGE. I mean, he was dropping mics and gems as he does for a living, so we shouldn't be surprised. But this whole thing about a man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great men. Again, Proverbs 18:16. Kev is an example of that. I would say I'm an example of that. That if you're pursuing what God puts on your heart, you're pursuing it with sincerity, you're pursuing it with an eye on how you treat others, doing the right thing and not just what you have the right to do, operating with your free will in alignment with God's will, then wonderful things happen. I mean, that's what it's, and it doesn't mean bad things never happen, but the bad things that do happen almost don't matter. They bless you. All things work to the good to those of us who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. Listen, another great episode of Be Lifted Up Radio. You can catch this episode as well as all the other episodes of the show at beliftedupradio.com or on mochapodcastnetwork.com, podcast plural, Be Lifted Radio on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X. Also, Sirius XM 141 HUR Voices. You can catch the show on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern. Listen, glad you joined us. Thanks again to Kev for being on the show. This is Alfred Edmond Jr., your host on Be Lifted Up Radio, your guide to living an abundant life. God bless you.